If ever your life could be a true crime podcast episode, then this podcast is for you. We're about to embark on a roller coaster of emotions, insights, survival, and stories about escape. So buckle up and let the journey begin.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back into the EscapePod. I'm Julie.
I'm Charity.
And you are with us today in the EscapePod suite on the lovely and beautiful and much warmer One Heart campus than the last time we recorded.
That's right.
We have escaped the deep freeze.
It actually felt like spring today.
It did.
Strolling
It's fake
across.
spring. Don't be fooled.
No, I'm not fooled, but
We're still in February.
I will embrace it while it's happening.
What are you escaping today?
Do you see my list?
Oh, my.
Well, just lots of stuff. Like that deep cold that we had. This is why I have crazy roots right now, because her salon was so cold that it just would not warm up. The weather was so cold, the heat couldn't keep up. So she's like, people's hair is freezing before I can even blow dry it and cut it and all that stuff. So I'm a week late on my hair thing. And then I'm going to show you my butt. Watch.
What? Oh, you sat on something or spilled something.
It is so weird. So I have a very ivory, whatever colored sweat long cardigan on.
Lovely cream cardigan.
And Nicole earlier, she's like, turn around. I think you have fuzz. And it's like, it was gummy. It's not on my coat. The only place I've sat is my chair. I don't even use black ink. But I have with Pirates of the Caribbean, when you get that black spot on your hand,
It's been a long time since I've
Davy
seen
Jones
that movie.
is coming for you.
Okay.
Your days are numbered. That's what I feel like, except it's
Your
right
days are
on my
numbered?
butt, on my on my light colored sweater. So yeah, I'd like to escape that. I used a whole Tide stick and it's not coming out. So
Shoot.
I have no idea what it is.
In your car?
It couldn't have, there's nothing on my coat. So it had to have happened once I got to work. Because it was gummy. There was something like
It's
it
so
would have been on the
strange.
back of my pants or my coat or something, and it's not.
Okay.
I don't know. I feel like the only place it could have been is my work chair, and I haven't been at work for
Yeah.
a few
that's
days.
bizarre.
So that did happen once before. I don't know if it was something that one of the janitorial staff was using, but I did have some black stuff on my desk. And I rubbed at it, and but I don't know what it was. But it had to be on my seat. There's no other place. Yeah, anyway, so that's what I'm escaping. Big black spots.
I'm still kind of trying to escape the cough in its entirety.
You sound way better, though.
I am way better. I never really felt bad. Just had the
You
nuisance
sounded
cough.
like you had the black spot or the
On my
black
lung.
death or something.
Right.
I could hear her across the hall. I'm like, are you going to live? It sounded awful.
It didn't feel as bad as it sounded. But having said that, it's just annoying.
Yeah.
Just annoying. Speaking of annoying, sometimes lawmakers' decisions can be pretty annoying. Do you want to lead us into our topic today?
Yeah, we are going today to be talking about escaping childhood and forced marriages.
Yeah.
So
Do you think 2025, how common can it still be, especially in America?
I have some stats for you.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Tell me
You
more.
ready to dive in?
I'm diving.
Okay. So first I will say I came across the work of an organization called Unchained at last.org. And then that led me to SaveTheChildren.org. So there's really some great organizations doing some amazing work, liberating young people, predominantly young women and girls without a voice from this. And I want to give a special shout out to our research assistant, Justice. She did help me do some research for this episode. She's been great. And I think she bit off. It was more than she bargained for, because it's like none of this content is like, woo, happy stuff, right? It's like, what? This is happening. So, and it was interesting. And she and I both did it independently. So I did some research. She did some research. We both came across, and I'll come to this in a moment, but some legislation that had been proposed in our own state of South Dakota legislator this session, which is still currently in session. And at the time we completed our research, it was like, okay, it's cleared this first hurdle, so it made it out of committee. It was going to get blah, 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 blah. And it looked good. So,
like a no-brainer.
like a no-brainer. And I will let you judge for yourself how many brains we have in our state legislature when we get to that section. So what do you know about like childhood or forced marriages?
Not much.
Did that ever come across your desk as a journalist or?
No, I think we had, during the time I was on air, one of the Jeff's higher-ups did purchase basically a compound here in the Black Hills. So, again, associated with the fundamentalist sect of the Church of Latter-day Saints. A lot of people don't really consider them part of the main church at all. But that was just one of the things. It's like how many people are living there, that kind of thing. But of course, it was incredibly secretive. But there were arrests made at that compound during my time on air. But as far as like, do I know people? No. I know people who got married very young. I would have never done that. My parents would never have allowed such a thing. But I do know it happens. So take it away.
Well, different times, different eras, different places. Obviously, people got married a lot younger.
Yeah.
Back in the way day.
Mm-hmm.
My parents got married at 15 and 17 because they got pregnant with yours truly. So I know it happens. But what I'm talking about specifically is a marriage where one or both parties enter into without full and free consent.
Correct.
They are not saying, this is what I want to do to make this right. I'm being pressured. I'm being forced. I'm being coerced by a parent, family, a trafficker, whatever that looks like. So, and sometimes there's even, I've come across cases too where both parties enter the marriage freely, but then it can later be a forced marriage if one or both parties is involuntarily required to stay in it.
Right.
So this does happen in the United States.
For sure.
More than I thought it did. And, like you mentioned, these special sects of, religious organizations that believe in.
Yeah. Like the more
polygamy.
marriages, the better.
Yeah, the more wives, the better. Not the more husbands, the better.
Correct. Interesting how that works.
Yeah, I wonder.
I, too, some days would like to have multiple wives to do all the things that I am trying to do all by my little lonesome.
I never expected that to come out of your mouth. That was funny.
Oh,
good job, Julie.
I'm joking. I shouldn't make a joke of this. It is actually very serious. Sorry, listeners.
Well, I found out that it does happen to both adults and children, but in child marriages in particular, one or both parties is under the age of 18. And in many countries around the world, including this one, child marriage is often forced. Mm-hmm. And it just flabbergasted me. Wait till I get to state by state statistics in a moment, but like jaw-dropping moment. So statistically, almost 300,000 children under the age of 18 were legally married in the United States between 2000 and 2018. I could not find more recent data.
Okay.
So in South Dakota, normally we rank the lowest on the scale of 50 states or close to hovering in all kinds of things, right? Mm-hmm. Well, we rank 23rd in the U.S. for number of childhood marriages per capita at 809, which is not great. Anyway, nearly all of the children married recently in South Dakota were like 16 or 17. So like too young to leave home, too young to flee a domestic violence situation for a shelter and be accepted, too young to file for divorce. You just become almost property. So if something turns abusive, you have very little recourse. If you run away, you're a runaway. You're not now an adult fleeing an abusive situation, right? You can't go to a shelter. Your parents have likely contributed to you being in this situation, and now you are owned by the adult, mostly male, of the thing. So there are generally 5 categories of laws in the United States that provide for or allow childhood marriages. So let's talk about like these groupings. Okay, let me blow this up so my eyeballs can track here. So the first one is that you have to be at least 18 years of age and provide legal proof.
Okay.
I can get behind that.
Yeah. 18, you're an adult.
Yep.
You
Well,
can do all sorts of things.
still arguably, but I mean, your brain's
Well-
not done developing. You can't drink.
Oh, no.
You can vote.
I was going to say
You can go
vote.
fight for a country.
Correct.
But still, 18, generally, you're done with high school. You're considered an adult, for all kinds of purposes. So the states of Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, New York, and Rhode Island, that's the law.
Okay.
Okay. Good job, you. All right. Next category, you have to be at least 16 or 17 and provide proof of age. South Dakota falls in that category,
Okay.
as does the
16 or
majority of the states. So Colorado, Georgia, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, New Hampshire, North Dakota, Ohio, us, Texas, West Virginia, and Wisconsin.
Okay.
Okay. The third category, you have to be at least 17 or 18, but you don't have to provide any proof.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Connecticut.
Can I just say, so if I buy cough medicine with certain ingredients in it, I have to show an ID. But in some states, I could have gotten married at 16 and
Just
shown
said I
no
was, yeah.
indication of how old I was.
Or 17. Yeah, in this case, it was 17. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
And that's also quite a few states. Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Maine, Nevada, New Jersey, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Vermont. And then some of the U.S. territories,
okay.
because we're very territorialist here. Okay. Second category from the bottom, which is the worst, you have to be at least 15
Eek.
or 16. Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, Hawaii, Idaho, Iowa, Kansas, North and South Carolinas, Utah, Virginia, D.C., and Wyoming.
Huh. DC is interesting. That seems odd.
Does it?
Yes.
Does it?
Yeah, kind of.
I mean, think about the things that go on in D.C.
I suppose.
Okay. I mean, that's a podcast. That's a
Whole new podcast.
whole new podcast. Okay. And then the worst, no minimum age for marriage.
Is that allowed anywhere?
California,
Interesting.
Mississippi, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Washington, and then there are some other, again, U.S. territories that fall into that category. That surprised me.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Do you have any guesses, Julie, on how these, in my opinion, should be illegal unions are predominantly structured?
I don't even want to take a guess. I'm sure it's nefarious.
Most children married were minor girls wed to adult men.
Ew.
This is 86% of childhood marriages. Okay. Child boys entering into marriages accounts for only 14%. And there really aren't any circumstances I can think of that should make this acceptable. More and more states are passing laws to reel it in, so that's good. But so childhood marriages are on the decline. And as of 2017, like we just covered, childhood marriage was legal in all 50 states at these differing levels of burden of proof for the age and different ages. Delaware and New Jersey were the first states in 2018 to end this, what they considered a human rights abuse. However, childhood marriage remains legal in 37 states today.
Okay.
Now, this is what leads into South Dakota. At the time we originally wrote this, I was very excited to say, oh my gosh, we're going to do this. We're going to pass this. It looks good. Spoiler alert, didn't happen. So here's kind of how this went. The bill in South Dakota was brought by a Republican Senator, Sidney Davis, and it took out a portion of the existing law that states that a person between the ages of 16 and 18 can be married as long as one of their parents or guardians signs a statement of consent. And it also implements a penalty for knowingly marrying an underage person as a Class 1 misdemeanor. That's how it was. So proponents of the bill included survivors of child marriages, including a lady named Sheena Eastman of Missouri, who gave testimony, and she said this, quote, "I got married 45 days after my 15th birthday to a 21-year-old man. The first month was the first hit. The second month was the first rape. I was told it was not rape because I was married and it was God's will. That's what she endured. And she goes on to explain her struggle to escape what was an abusive marriage and child abuse at the same time. And, she says, I quote, I couldn't go to a domestic violence shelter because I wasn't 18. I couldn't run away from home because the cops returned me to him when I did. They don't take you to your parents. They take you to your husband or your owner, because that's how it's considered in the eyes of the law. I wasn't allowed to get a divorce because it was a contract and I couldn't hire an attorney. And I wasn't even allowed to get a restraining order until my mother came out and saw him beating her. Then she was able to have someone corroborate that. When Mom finally agreed to take her to get the restraining order, the worst part of that is that it was 2 years and 4 days later she was arrested for his murder.
Ooh.
Yeah. I mean, it escalated and she had to protect herself. So she spent 25 years in prison for the murder charge in a situation she never should have been in. Opponent testimony kicked off with Norman Woods of South Dakota Family Voice Action. He began by stating for the record that forced marriage is horrible before arguing that the marriages themselves aren't the problem, but instead that the issue is the abusers.
Well, he's not 100% wrong. I mean, marriage in and of itself isn't what causes this. It's the people in the marriage.
But you don't put a child in
Correct.
that situation.
Correct.
His second point was that the bill would take power away from the parents of minor would-be brides and grooms and give it to the state instead. He used the example of a pregnant 17-year-old girl and a 19-year-old man. Did I say 7 or 17?
I think you said 17.
Okay, sorry, my brain glitched. As a situation where it would be proper for a parent to sign off on a marriage, because it's that children cannot be born out of wedlock assessment, right? Mm-hmm. His third point of opposition is that the bill would raise the marriage age to 18, but would not change the state's age of consent, which is 16. Change the age of consent then.
Right.
You know, anyway. So it went on and on and on. It did pass committee 4-2. Bill went to the Senate, and it failed 19-16. Mm-hmm. Now, keep in mind, they sweepingly also approved stricter regulations around internet porn age verification. So we're going to protect kids from that, but we're not going to protect children from these marital situations where they don't have a voice. It's not. It's without their consent.
Yeah.
So anyway.
I think that is a really interesting, I guess I didn't think of it, the contract part. And that then, I mean, it's interesting that a child could enter into such a contract. It seems very hypocritical.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because you can't just
vote.
get out of it.
You can't vote. You can't hire an attorney, but you can enter into a contract. That kind of contract, it just doesn't seem right to me.
Yeah.
Under no circumstances, me personally, would I have ever forced, even with a pregnancy, my children into that situation. Never.
Right.
Because if it's not wanted by one of those parties, that is no type of relationship for a child to be raised in.
Correct.
In my opinion. Anyway, as I mentioned, this situation is often forced. Children who have not yet, like you just mentioned, reached legal adulthood have limited legal rights, and they can easily be forced or coerced into an unwanted or arranged marriage, or be forced to stay in one because they aren't of legal age to make these decisions for themselves. They can't file for a protection order, file for divorce, hire an attorney, or even be admitted to a shelter like we mentioned in the case of the lady who provided that testimony. So they stay stuck until they reach that age of legal consent. Even more horrific to think about is oftentimes it's the parents who are responsible for facilitating this type of marriage due to their belief system or, they just whatever, which makes escape even more difficult because even though they arranged it, this is the only support system these victims in these situations often have. And it's really hard to break away from a family or betray their wishes.
Yes.
And so these children literally have nobody oftentimes on their side. And even those family members or friends who disagree with the arrangement, they're also living in fear of retaliation or
Ostracization.
I
can't say it either.
It's not just me. Okay. Or ramifications, let's say it that way, if they do or say anything to try to protect their loved one. It's just lose-lose all around.
I want to pipe in and just say, like, let's take the teenage factor out of it. The fact that you are, in these cases that you're speaking of, very much a child still.
Yes.
I knew somebody once got married at like 22. She probably was maybe 23, right in there. And they were married a hot 7 months before it all went awry.
Like physically or just
he had
irreconcilably or
I think he had a drinking issue.
Oh no.
And so I know police were called because I don't know that he physically hurt her, but he scared her enough that
like
she
it
called
was
police.
probably going to happen.
It was very threatening, and there were significant issues. They were very young. I'm pretty sure the first time I met him, he was drunk, and I don't think much changed in there behind closed doors. But I remember when it came out that they were going to divorce, and she said, and mind you, this is a person 5-6 years older than the kids you're talking about, how the night before she got married, one of her high school friends said to her, "Do you know what you're doing?" Half joking, like, you're taking a big step here. And her response was, "I'm not sure that I do." Something to that effect. And she really felt like, even though she was having doubts, she could not say anything. She could not say anything. The night before I got married, I was so nervous. And I was almost 28 years old. I was so nervous that my mother said to me, if you don't want to do it. Yeah. And I'm like, no, I want to marry him. I'm just like, the reality was setting in. Like, this is a big deal. And we've been prepping for it, and you do all the exciting stuff. And it's like, tomorrow it's real. But I was excited. And actually the day we got married, I really wasn't nervous at all. And so, like, I woke up and I felt really good. But I often have thought of that person, and I just thought if she had just taken a beat and not been scared to tell her parents, I'm not sure I want to do this. But the reception was set up. Everybody was there.
We don't want to disappoint. We don't want to let other people down.
Anybody. And
what will they think of me? I'll inconvenience them.
Yes. And I also had a priest, actually the priest who did marriage prep with us, commented once that he had asked an older priest, because he was fairly young at the time, what's a good marriage prep? Like, how do I know that this is a
good fit?
Yeah. Like, not that he has an ultimate say. You can get married one way or another, right? But the older priest said, a good marriage prep can be that they decide not to get married. Like, they see it's not, they're not right for each other.
To whatever's happening.
Their values don't align enough, and this and that. And that stuck with me too. And I don't know. I feel like these are people in their 20s or 30s can have doubts and be concerned in this or that. And they're even terrified to speak up sometimes. Imagine being 15 or 16 or 17 years old, maybe expecting a baby, recognizing that your whole life is about to change and your parents are encouraging you to do it, And it's like, of course they would be scared to say no. Of course.
Yep. I mean, I won't even get into it with my parents, but I very easily could have been one of these numbers. So looking at that breakdown of the hundreds of thousands of kids, okay. So this was from 2000 to 2018. There were almost 150,000 17-year-olds married, almost 64,000 16-year-olds, 8,200 15-year-olds, 1,200 14-year-olds, 78 13-year-olds.
That's nuts.
14 12-year-olds, 1 11-year-old, and 5 10-year-olds.
That's my child.
Yes.
That's
It's
crazy.
not okay. I'll argue with anybody. It's not okay.
It's not okay. No. They have their whole life ahead of them.
Not anymore. In fact, that's really a really good segue into this next piece is that there's data showing how children forced into these marriages, it destroys their chances at like positive health, education, and economic outcomes. So in the United States, those married before the age of 18 report high rates of physical, sexual, financial, and emotional abuse during their marriages.
That's so unfortunate.
As well as unwanted or unplanned pregnancies, so pregnancies forced upon them. The impacts of underage marriage are even more severe for teen mothers, meaning that the moms who marry and then divorce are more likely to suffer economic deprivation and instability after they get out of that situation than teen moms who stay single and never enter into that marriage. And marriage before the age of 18 has a 70 to 80% divorce rate.
That doesn't surprise me.
Doesn't
at all.
surprise me either.
No.
Yeah.
I just think how much you change.
Oh
and
my
I can
God.
say this being
Yeah,
40-something
absolutely.
years old and looking back at my life in high school and my life in college and my life as a young adult. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like you got married very young and you were
I
not
did.
a teenager.
Yeah. 22.
But in my mind, I'm like, that's crazy.
Well, no, I mean, my son's 23. If he all of a sudden said he was getting married, I'd be like, wait, what?
I know.
Yeah.
Isn't it weird?
Yeah.
We have people in our immediate circle who were even younger than that and happily married to this day. And it does happen, but I will tell you, even they would say they are the exception to the rule.
Yeah, we are totally the
They
exception.
fully
to the rule.
recognize that, like, nope, most people who got married as young as we did
I could
don't
vote,
make
I
it.
could drink. My brain was almost done. All
Yep.
the stuff. Yeah. Free, full consent,
Right.
all the stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you're going to be shocked to learn this next part.
I'm certain I'm not.
That it's pretty widely known in these circles that child marriage is a legal loophole for statutory rape laws.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So in most states and under federal law, sex with a child that would otherwise be considered rape, and in some cases felony rape, becomes legal just because of a little piece of paper that says you're married. And that's a thing that
Yeah.
I was so fired up about because it's like we talk so often about orders of protection, also a piece of paper that really don't do much.
It's not a shield.
But this one, it does a lot, just in the total opposite direction.
Right.
You know, and some sources called the marriage license a get out of jail free card for child rapists. So yay, America. Yeah. There's some really harsh and rightfully so opinions out there. And like I mentioned earlier, in some states, sex with a minor is still considered statutory rape and a crime remains a crime even if it happens within a marriage. This is something that I just can't wrap my brain around. So the marriage is legal, but sex within that marriage in some states is considered rape.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not enforcing anything.
Right.
Yeah. So they're literally subjecting, when the states issue these marriage licenses, they know they're subjecting a child to rape, period. They know it. So since 2000, at least 60,000 child marriages occurred at an age or within an age differential that should have been considered a sex crime. Of those, 88% essentially gave a rapist a get-out-of-jail-free card, while 12% were sending a child off to be raped.
I just got the heebie-jeebies.
You should. And either way, that marriage license made a mockery of statutory rape laws. So what's the point? If you're going to not shore up these loopholes, what is the point? You're not protecting anybody. And because our laws are so faulty, childhood marriage in the United States has become a vehicle for human trafficking due to these loopholes in immigration laws, and coupled with some of our states thinking that it's okay for religious reasons or whatever to marry children off to adults. Thousands of American girls are being trafficked legally,
Yeah, that's nuts.
essentially selling their citizenship for someone else's profit as they're being forced to marry adult men from overseas so that the men can get a U.S. visa.
Oh.
Families are capitalizing on this. Yes.
I was thinking of it going the other way.
No.
Like men who are here using the law to get
That is
somebody
also
who
happening.
wants to be
Importing.
in the U.S. Yeah.
Yes. They're doing that too.
Okay.
Yeah, bringing child brides from overseas, yes. And around the world, get this, as of 2021, not that long ago, it was estimated that 22 million people were forced into unwanted marriages. More than 650 million women alive today were married as children. About 40 million girls aged 15 to 19 are currently married or in a union around the world. And each year, 12 million girls will marry before reaching the age of 18. And of those, 4 million are under the age of 15. By 2030, it's estimated that 150 million girls will lose their childhoods due to forced child marriage.
It's nuts.
So,
the numbers are so big, it's kind of hard to wrap my mind around that.
It is. I'm just going to jump around because it's just these stats, they don't get any better. I think you all got the point. But Justice was kind enough to pull together some survivor stories for us. So just little snippets, like a little vignette of different stories, and then a bigger one of a lady who professionally tells her story now, and it's pretty interesting, just to give you some insight as to what these young women and girls and young boys are being subjected to.
Yeah.
So this one, 16-year-old Jen was recovering from an ectopic pregnancy when her parents forced her to marry her 44-year-old rapist and abuser.
That's disgusting.
Even though their age difference made the relationship a felony, she never spoke to a judge. No one did anything to intervene. She did survive. So there is that. 15-year-old Sarah was forced to marry a man twice her age, whom she had just met that morning.
Oh.
Yay, Sarah's family. 14-year-old Carol, when are the families going to be held accountable for this crap?
That's a fair question, yeah.
Damn, it's awful. 14-year-old Carol was coerced into marrying the 20-year-old man who stalked, raped, and impregnated her.
It's such a convoluted mindset.
That this is the solution?
That's the solution. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
My brain will never go there. Also, 14-year-old Pat was pregnant when her parents married her off to the 27-year-old Bible study counselor who had been raping her for 2 years.
That's ridiculous.
17-year-old Esther was forced to marry a man who raped her regularly and arranged for other men to gang rape her so he could watch.
Ugh, scum.
14-year-old Jen had her mother threaten to throw her out on the street if she didn't marry the 21-year-old man who lied to her and pretended to be a teenager. That one sounds like something my parents would have done. 17-year-old Aaliyah's guardians took her to another country to marry a complete stranger against her will, telling her she would have to die to get out of the marriage.
Well, she's telling the story, so I'm going
to... She got out.
She got
with the help of some of these organizations I mentioned at the beginning. 15-year-old April was abandoned by her parents, leaving her with a 22-year-old friend who had been grooming her since she was 12. He raped her on their wedding night and continued to sexually assault her almost daily. 13-year-old Aisha was forced to marry a man much older than she was, and an anonymous 24-year-old male who was in love with another girl was forced into a different marriage as a child. So now this is the story of Ruby Marie. So she tells her story. I'm retelling her story. I'm not reading her story. I hope that makes sense. Ruby was one of 8 children. She was from a Muslim family, originally from Bangladesh, growing up in Wales. And her childhood, she's very happy. She loved her parents. Her parents would often talk about their homeland. It sounded like a fairy tale land. She had a lot of fun as a kid. But as she and her sister hit puberty, things kind of started to change. The girls were sheltered. They were restricted from dating. They couldn't even talk to boys. They were expected to wear very conservative and unrevealing clothing, kind of like my professional pajamas I have on today. They weren't allowed to hang with friends. I had a really strict father, and that forced me to keep things secret and sneak out and get myself in a whole bunch of trouble. And Ruby and her sister did the same thing. So they both had boyfriends that they kept secret, but her sister was 18. Ruby was only 15. And so her sister had less to risk because she could legally move out if she wanted to and not be considered a runaway, which she did so she could marry her boyfriend, which her father would not allow.
Oh, okay.
In their culture, this was dishonorable. So her father was furious and then placed the entire burden of restoring the family honor on Ruby's shoulders. So soon after this incident with the sister, the male members of Ruby's family began having meetings, unbeknownst to her, discussing her future. And soon they announced that they were going to take a family trip back to Bangladesh. And Ruby remembers like she being so excited because this is where her parents are from. You know, she really thought this was going to be like a great vacation. So they get there and move the family into their family had a mansion.
Oh, wow.
So for the summer, I mean, it sounds like a fairy tale. Mm-hmm. She's like, this is great. They have an awesome holiday. And then all of a sudden it came to an abrupt end one day in September when they were expected to return to Wales, and her father announced his plans to marry Ruby off, making it sound like they were winning the lottery or something good. And she said, quote, "My world came crashing down when I realized that the whole reason we were there was like this domino effect. I just couldn't take in what he was saying to me. I was totally numb and just tried to get on with my life." And Dad didn't waste any time at all. Like a few weeks into the announcement, Ruby was met in the kitchen of the mansion by a stranger her mom politely pointed to, telling her, "That's who you're going to marry," easily twice her age.
Oh.
In the lead up to the wedding, Ruby became more and more disconnected, she said. She became very depressed. She was starting that process of disassociating so that she could get through what was about to happen. I mean, she'd had a boyfriend back in Wales, so she knew what was coming. And she also knew it was probably going to be traumatic. 6 weeks later, she was married to that stranger, and she felt completely betrayed by her whole family. Fortunately for Ruby, she'd been having her period when she got married, so her new husband left her alone. But as soon as that was over, she said it was a living nightmare. Continuous rape. She learned to dissociate herself as a way of coping, and because she did have some family members that did not agree with what was happening, one uncle had given her birth control so that she at least couldn't get pregnant. That was the only thing that made her feel somewhat safe against the horror show she was living in. But of course, when she didn't get pregnant right away as expected, her sister-in-law tried to figure out why, found the pills in Ruby's purse, and outed her to her husband and his family. Ooh. So that was over. She became pregnant right away. And for her, this is traumatic. She did not want to be pregnant, let alone with that man's child. Right. And everyone around her is celebrating. Can you just imagine how lonely you have to feel? So she soon became very ill during the pregnancy, suffering from CMV. Do you know what that is?
Nope.
Cytomegalovirus. It's kind of related to like chickenpox and herpes and mono. It's in that family. Oh. So not great.
No, that's
She'd contracted it from her husband.
Ew.
So clearly he wasn't a virgin.
Right.
And this virus was known to cause harm to developing babies. So it's pretty serious. So when she was 9 weeks along, her family decided to fly her back to the UK to like take care of her health issues for the duration of the pregnancy. So getting back to Wales, she thought was going to be a relief, but it really only drove home the reality that her life, as she knew it, was over.
Right.
So she attempted to take her own life.
Oh.
And when she woke up in a hospital after that attempt, a nurse asked her if she wanted to terminate the pregnancy, which Ruby very much did. And she was so relieved, she said, to have someone actually care about what she wanted. And this was the first time in years she said she didn't feel invisible. And by the next day, they were doing the scan ahead of the procedure. She saw her daughter's beating heart, and she couldn't go through with it, despite the health risks that the baby was facing because of the CMV. And so she went on with it, and her daughter was born prematurely with permanent health complications, such that Ruby couldn't even touch her baby for the first 2 weeks of her daughter's life. And throughout all this, Ruby was still expected to speak to her husband over the phone and exchange letters, but it was just a formality because her family was trying to prove they were married so that her husband could get a UK visa. So now they were going to bring him there.
Joy.
Yeah. So Ruby, of course, wanted nothing to do with this. She actually began very covertly dating a different man whom she'd met.
Risky.
As he worked in a restaurant that was also one of her family members worked in. So she finally just ran away with this guy, but was tracked down, hunted down. And now her family was determined to get her back to Bangladesh so that she couldn't run away again. So now we're in 2000. Ruby's break came one day when she saw an old school friend walking past her house. She ran out of the house, begged the girl to help her, explaining this honor-based abuse and forced marriage she was enduring. The friend took Ruby to her parents' house and helped her contact police, who then helped her get her belongings from her own family's home and get her on a train to the man she wanted to be with.
Okay.
But like happens so often, once you've known a cycle of abuse, there's something wired in us that makes us repeat those cycles. And this guy ended up being violent and controlling. And instead of rape every day, she was beaten daily.
Jeez. Okay.
He would even kick her in the stomach after becoming pregnant with her second child. But she stayed with him for 5 years. Eventually, she figured it out and she fled this guy, but he stalked her for 5 years after that before she was finally granted a restraining order. It took that long. And as she freed herself from this ordeal, she decided she wanted to break the cycle. So she booked a ticket to Thailand and then traveled the world. And that was part of her like healing circuit, you know, her healing journey. And then she finished her general education. She went on to entering the pageant circuit, even winning the title of Ms. Galaxy in 2017. So now she has a platform to speak from and share these stories. So today, Ruby, whose children are now in their 20s, is an ambassador for the Sundial Center, where she educates people on forced marriages and honor-based abuse.
Okay.
And so now this is her calling and her work to try to protect other people from this. So
it's interesting that the family, in her case, clearly held dear some of the cultural beliefs that led to this, right? Yet never expressed to their children, like, this is what we do. You know what I mean? Like, they obviously knew enough that
it's like it seemed like they didn't expect it.
Well, yeah, or that wouldn't you, if you think it's such a good thing, wouldn't you share that with your child, teenager?
So it's an expectation.
Yeah. And instead they basically
shock.
lied to her, like, oh, we're going on vacation back to Bangladesh.
Right.
Oh, and by the way, you're not leaving with us. You're getting married. Like, I don't know. Again, just if you think it's such this grand thing, why is it a secret? Why is it a surprise?
Fair question.
You know, I know that's looking at it very simplistically, but to me, if the simplistic questions can't be answered, then the very complicated position you put this person in is that much worse. Like, ugh, it's maddening.
Yeah. So we need to demand more and better from our legislators in, what did I say, 37 states?
It's wild.
Yeah.
It's wild. Again, recognizing that different times
are different.
Time periods.
Yes.
It was different. And I don't know. I don't even know what to say. I didn't even have a boyfriend till I was in college. So maybe I'm not the best person to judge this particular thing. But
no, it's hard. I mean, we know better. And when we know better, we should do better.
Right.
And we know that children are being sold and forced, and their childhoods are being completely stolen away from them.
Yeah.
And on its surface, I don't think anybody or our legislators are really okay with that.
Right.
But they go back to these antiquated belief systems.
Yeah.
Well, this is what, my family and their family before them and their family before them did, and everything worked out okay, but did it?
Right.
Did it?
Well, and
all I know is we need to protect children.
Yeah, the idea of human trafficking and sex trafficking, it has always existed, but our knowledge of it and how it happens is much different now. I mean, we know a lot more. So knowing that a lot of the people who end up in these relationships are not there willingly should be enough. You should never, I just can't imagine being in any relationship and feeling forced to be there.
No.
Like a friendship or otherwise.
No.
It's not okay.
I mean, it sucked having parents I didn't really choose. You know what I mean?
Right.
But my God.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine. It's just so, It's just so horrific. And it's not, I mean, we read a small sampling of stories. There are just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these stories. Fortunately, people survive these things, but the trauma. And then when you have someone that has the bravery to testify at the legislature of any state, that is horrific. I mean, that is so stressful to have the bravery to do that and then have that thing still result in meh.
Yeah.
Let's just same old.
Yeah.
Go South Dakota.
How are we going to lighten the mood here? You want to take a quick
know.
break?
Yeah, let's take
I need
a
a drink
break.
of water. Blow my nose because, again, it's not completely gone. We will be right back on the EscapePod. Need an early morning boost or midday pick-me-up? Check out the Homebrew Coffee Shop, a coffee shop with a cause in the heart of the One Heart campus. Homebrew is home to delicious coffee, sweet treats, breakfast, and lunch items, a great place to meet friends or host small group meetings. Homebrew, located at 201 Kansas City Street in Rapid City. Open Monday through Friday from 6:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. Homebrew, where you'll find hope for a home in every cup. Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to the EscapePod. I'm Julie, here with Charity. We are very anti-child enforced marriage, if you couldn't tell from the first 45 minutes of our conversation today, but we're going to lighten the mood now. Escapism co-host style. Any place, mindset, mood you'd like to escape to?
You're giving me a look.
No, I'm just curious.
Well, there is a new gluten-free bakery in Rapid City. Shout out Nana's Cafe.
Yum.
Okay, ready? So it was my birthday last weekend.
You're going to make me hungry.
I just Googled brunch, because I'm like, is there any new brunch spot in Rapid City?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, what is this place? How long has it been there? So we go and everything, all the bread stuff, everything is gluten-free.
Okay.
And so I got to order French toast,
Ooh.
which I haven't had besides making it at home with gluten-free bread. It's just not the same, right? Like real thick, chewy.
Yeah.
It was so good. And then she was experimenting with donuts.
Oh.
And so she brought these donut bites that were still warm from the fryer, like over to the
Tell her
table.
she can experiment here at One Heart.
Julie, it brought tears to my eyes. And everybody's looking at me and I'm like, you have no idea how long it's been since I've had a real donut. And then she looked at me and she's like, yeah, people cry here at least once a week.
Oh
and she's like, I'm just going to leave the whole plate. And I mean, it was just divine. So shout out Nana's Bakery. I can't wait to go back.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I love it. I really have nothing. My next 2 weeks is such a hot mess. I am reading a book. That'll be my escapism.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, just a very no-brainer. I don't have to think a lot. I like those. Don't you love those? Or do you need like intellectually stimulating?
No, I like no-brainer time.
I read a psychological thriller a year and a half ago, and I haven't read another one like it because it freaked me out so much. I was like, I am not relaxed. Like, I want to enjoy reading, and if I can't do that, I don't want to do it.
I had a tax appointment yesterday for my mother-in-law because we're still getting all her stuff in order. And then a friend of mine offered to do her taxes, so I canceled that appointment, but I'd already taken the day off from my birthday holiday. So I'm like, I was going to work because I felt guilty because I'm me. And then I'm like, screw it. I'm just going to actually just take the day.
Yeah.
So I'm like painting my nails. I watched a movie on Netflix. And that was interesting because that movie, it was called Don't Move. I can't remember the lead actress's name, but she's also in, she's Monica on Yellowstone. That's how I recognized her.
Oh, yeah. I know who that
But
is. She's amazing.
Yeah. But this, the storyline of this movie is a serial rapist and killer tracks her down, and he injects her with something that paralyzes her. And she manages to get away, but she's like literally trapped. She's aware, she's awake, she can see, she can hear, but she can't talk and she can't move. And
that's
what this whole topic today like reminded me of. It's like you're trapped and you just anyway. So
not physically, but in every other way.
It does have a great
basically.
ending, and I like movies with great endings.
Okay.
So
That is
made me
interesting
happy.
that's your form of entertainment.
Yeah. I don't know what that says about me.
I don't know what it says about you either.
Yeah.
All right.
Triumph. I like triumphant,
Well,
you know,
that I can appreciate.
good overcoming evil.
I get my triumph from a good sports themed movie. I like the underdog winning
I
it
like
all.
sports movies.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't seek them out, but Tim likes them. And then when I
Yeah.
watch, they're great.
That's
Yeah.
what I like, a good inspirational sports
Yeah.
movie. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. We appreciate every single one of you. If you like what you heard, please share it with a friend who you think might enjoy it too. We're just a small team here, so any support we can get from anywhere, we will take. We do this show in our spare time. I put that in quotation marks, spare time, because we don't really have any, but we do it for a reason, because we'd like to provide operational support for the nonprofit where we work called One Heart, where our mission here is empowering people to overcome crisis and achieve self-sustainability.
That's right. We are a true podcast for a cause. So you can feel good about spreading the word and commenting and sharing and rating and reviewing and all the stuff.
All the
wherever
things.
you listen to your podcasts. And that, just taking like 10 seconds to do that actually helps the algorithms show us to other people, hey, you might be interested in that. So you can check us out on our website, EscapePod.live. Link out to our socials from there. Or you can reach out to us at justbecause@escapepod.live. Share a story topic idea with us. We would love to hear those. Or share your story escape. If you have escaped or would like to escape a child or forced marriage, send in your story. If you want to be anonymous, let us know that. Absolutely. You can send those into escapeartist@escapepod.live.
We are closing the hatch on this episode of the Escape Pod. Remember, trauma may be inevitable, but how you grapple with it is optional. So stay resilient.
And keep laughing.
Bye, everybody.